Now, in this video, man, I'm telling you, this is the video. This is the complete ball python breeding process. Now, I put out videos before, but in this video, I'm making a complete guide from 10 millimeters to hatchlings. And I think that this will play a key role if you're a new ball python breeder, or maybe you're an existing breeder and you're just trying to tweak the system you have and compare it to something else. This is what we do. That's my disclaimer. This is what we do, and this is what I've been documenting over the last 3 years to just kind of put together a complete guide of breeding ball pythons from start at 10 millimeters to finish when you get your hatchlings. And then at the end, I'm also going to give a little bit of hatchling care advice, and I'm gonna try to do all this as efficiently as possible without getting so long-winded. So stick around for this video and let's see how I do. Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Paul with Spheric Reptiles. I'm so excited to come to you today for this complete ball python breeding process, right? So I put out videos before, and I thank you guys for watching those. And of course, this is all from things that we've documented, and I just wanted to make a digital record and make some sort of a formatted thumbnail so that I too could go back and refer to these things, because inevitably in life, as we all are living in life, right? You have other things going. You got family, you have work, you have maybe some other animals that are outside of ball pythons. It's a little bit more labor intensive, I guess, or requires a little bit more care than just a ball python, which predominantly just sits there, right? They're beautiful, and that's why we make them. So, and that's the whole thing about breeding ball pythons. But in this video, just to stress about how cool it is to breed ball pythons, I put together this complete guide, right? This complete guide will be the last time that we ever at Spheric Reptiles, I hate to say the last time, but hopefully the last time we ever have to do something like this. I'm gonna put a lot of thumbnails up on the screen. I'm gonna walk you through each phase of the process with timelines, weight gains, you name it. I'm not gonna talk about ultrasounding, because if you follow the video, I'll be discussing at which stage you'll be at. So if you go from 10 to 20 to 30 to 40, 45, ovulation, all that stuff. If you have an ultrasound, that makes it a lot easier. But if you don't, you can still watch this video, because I'll be discussing average weight gain. So a weight gain range as that female goes from 10 through ovulation. You know, hey, I hope that I can do a good job on this. You guys are normally very honest and letting me know if I do or not. So I definitely appreciate that. This is one that I think that you should probably save. I'm gonna let you know that up front. I've already went over the outline for this a couple of times. So if you see me look over to the left, that's what I'm doing. I'm referring to my outline so I can be a little bit more efficient. So now let's face it. You have ball pythons, or you're interested in them. And now you've got your ball pythons. They're of some size. And now you're saying, hey, I've been seeing all these people on YouTube and in other places going to reptile expos who've been breeding these things. I want to do this myself. I want to DIY my own ball python hatchlings, you know? So it's like doing a tune-up on your Camry or your Tacoma or anything else that you'd want to do. Resetting your G-Shock watch. You know, as I've already said, a 10-year-old can probably explain that a lot better than any adult when it comes to the G-Shock watch. But hey, let's start off now at 10 millimeters. You got your 10 millimeter female, and she is developing follicles. So what do? You don't even know. So one of the key things that you need to know is that before you can even start to breed, let's start with the female. So she needs to be at least 2 years old, at least 1,350 grams, and have a good solid body composition. Now I'm gonna show you guys one of these females that's at this stage right now that is developing follicles. And if you can come over here, baby. So this is one that's at 10 millimeters. So she was there before, but I tried to pair her up, and what I saw was that the male was not locking with her. So I had to cancel it out. She stayed at 10 millimeters. And so now she's gonna go back. And that's an acid orange dream yellow belly that I was trying to pair up with our blackhead, confusion, leopard, dreamsicle. He just wasn't doing right this year for whatever reason, but hey, I just put him back on the shelf and said, I'll just wait for her for later on in the year, and hopefully we can try that pairing again around October or November and see what happens. But at this phase, you want to make sure that your female is of weight, right? So this female right here is well over 1,800 grams. So she's ready. She's already given us a clutch of eggs. And I was just trying to see if we can get another one. But you want to start off at that baseline of 10 millimeters, guys. And that is key. If you're going to start pairing up at this time, so what you should expect within the first month to know if something good is happening, first, you should see maybe an observable lock. So you have the male, you have the female, you put them together, and you should see some sort of a lock. Your female's feeding habit won't necessarily change a lot during this phase, but she should gain within 1 month, just to let you know if you're on the right track of building. She should gain at least 50 grams to about 150 grams during this time. And that way, even if you don't have an ultrasound, you can weigh her at the end of that month to see if something good is happening. Now, I say 50 to 150 grams, right? Normally, your ball python might gain 50 grams, but your ball python will not gain 100 to 150 grams if they are not building that follicle. Because what that is showing you is that as you're pairing them up and they're locking, and that male is actually stimulating this female to increase her follicles with follicle stimulating hormone. I won't even go down that path. If you want that, Google search that. But that basically is going to help develop that follicle and pull in more nutrients, maintain more moisture, and it's going to now, for that female, she'll stop eliminating as much waste because her body's using more of that rodent supply energy that you're giving her. Rodent supply energy. That's important, guys. So during this time, you want to make sure that you're feeding your animals like the best quality rodents that you can. And it's, the reason why I say that is because they need all of those nutrients that rodent have, plus they need the calcium. So if you want, and you're feeding frozen thawed, you could sprinkle on some additional calcium to that animal when you're feeding, just to make sure that that ball python is starting to store up this additional calcium stores that she'll need later on down the line, guys. But remember, the key takeaway from this is you put them together, you're going to see an observable lock, and you should see a weight gain of 50 to about 150 milligrams. And with that growth, if you have an ultrasound machine, at the end of the month, you could actually measure that, and it'll give you some measurement, which I'll talk about next. Now, the female, you've been pairing them up, and now we're at close to 20 millimeters, guys. This is when the female flips the script, and all of a sudden she becomes this, like, always hungry, food driven, almost like any other type of snake species, right? She becomes like a yellowtail crebo or a rat snake. Like anytime you come into the room, she's looking for food. You open up the enclosure or the tub and she's coming out at you. So that's why we use these snake hooks during that phase. So during the 20 millimeter phase, you need something to open up that tub or distract that female so that you can feed her, right? And I think that's an important thing to do, because here's what's happening, guys. You're going from day 30 to day 60 right now. This will let you know that she's at 20 millimeters. From baseline, at this point, she should gain approximately over the next 30 days, 150 to on average about 300 grams. That's what we've seen in our collection. So that lets you know that you're on the right path. You're going to continue to pair up for that female and that male inside of the female tubs. And remember, every time you do your pairings, you're going to place the male inside the female tub, and then you can use some of the secret sauce to help get them going if they're not going on their own. Later on, they kind of get it and they just kind of go, because then the female starts to exude more pheromones, more of that Brute by Fabergé, and the male will just be on it. He'll be like, hey, where's she at? Where's she at? But anyway, remember that weight gain up to 300 grams, 150 to 300 grams over the course of that time. And here's what's happening, guys. So now you're feeding that rodent and you're hardly noticing any like solid waste. You see the urates come out because there's nothing that the animal can actually do with the urates, so that's why they're separated, which is cool for the ball pythons that they do that. The other snake species we have, they don't, so that makes that poop a lot messier, but that's sidebar. But let me show you an animal that's at around 20 millimeters, and again, I have these, so this is 10, that's 20, this is 30, this is kind of pre-ovulation, and then that's ovulation right there, or this is waiting on eggs, and this is ovulation. So let me show you an animal that's at this stage right here. So I'll go and I'll find one that's with the red tub, and this one is actually being paired up. And you can see that they're kind of close to doing it, and that's a Inchy Mojave female with a TSK hypo male. And so we're trying to get them at that stage. And so now she is, with the exception, it's weird. So whenever I go in close to her tub with the male, then all of a sudden she's like not as food driven. I think that maybe she wants it too. But the male definitely does. He wants to get in there and he's like coming out of his tub because I think he kind of knows, like once you get him on a rotational schedule. But anyway, the 300 gram weight gain is what you're looking for, the increased food drive, and you're going to continue to pair that male up with that female. And here's the thing. So everybody has a different way that they pair up. What we do is we pair up our male to our females 3 days after they eat, right? So if I feed them on a Monday, then Thursday, or at the worst case scenario, it's Friday afternoon that I pair them up, and I do that for 48 to 72 hours. So what that'll give me is free time on the weekend. I'm not cleaning up or doing anything else until Monday. I can keep this room quiet with the exception of filming these crazy videos, and it'll allow them time to actually do their thing without being disturbed. And this is important. So as you are pairing up and hopefully this female is developing those follicles as she grows, you want to disturb her as little as possible with the exception of feeding, changing the water, and cleaning out. So hopefully you can do all of those things in either 2 or 1 step. Like it takes us 2 steps. The day that I feed, just to let you guys know, the day that we feed here at Spheric Reptiles is the day that I also take the water dish out and I clean out the tubs when I'm pairing them up. Now, if it's any other animal like a hatchling, I can go in there whatever I want because I still want them used to human interaction, right? Even though they are more food driven in these tubs. I'm telling you, these darker tubs, they get more food driven, so I have to make sure that I grab them out, give them a little enrichment, and put them back when I'm doing my water changes. But that's when I really get to have fun, when I'm adding the water back. So that's 20 millimeters, guys. The key takeaway here is that I mean, ravenous food drive, right? They're coming out the tub, they're gaining this weight, you're still pairing them up, and now she's starting to build this follicle with this follicle stimulating hormone. When they get to close to 30 millimeters, this is the key that I think that a lot of people start mistaking it for ovulation. So there is some mid-body swelling at this time at 30 millimeters because of vitellogenesis. So vitellogenesis is when the female starts, the follicle isn't just growing, now she starts adding in additional lipids, amino acids and proteins. There's some fats that are added in too, but there's hardly any calcium being added to that follicle at this stage because it's not needed. But this is all prepping. So this is a time where the follicle actually gets prepped, like the prep work, so that it can actually at one more stage receive the sperm that the female has been storing up. And it's crazy how she can store up the sperm for fertilization, guys, which is anywhere on average 61 to 90 days. This female can gain up to 450 grams over baseline at this time, guys. Now, you got to remember, that's a lot. So if you started off at 1350 and now you're at 450 plus during the, like 30 millimeters, that's 1800 grams. And that puts your female well into a good body composition, a good weight, so that she can actually take these follicles into laying eggs. And that's ultimately the goal. But during this phase, one of the key takeaways is that she'll go off of food. And unfortunately, during the same time, your male might go off of food too, which is why you need to make sure that you're feeding them going into the breeding season. When you know who you're going to pair up, give them a little bit extra meals or reduce that wait time between meals. So if you're at 14 days, bump them down to a 7-day feeding schedule, just so that they have the energy and fat stores so that they can go through this whole process. That's for the male and the female, because your male can actually get to a point to where their sperm is no longer viable because their body, like if they get too small when they go off of food, then they can go into a different phase where they're just trying to survive. They're going to continue to try to pair, but they'll just be shooting blanks. So we don't want them shooting blanks. We want to make sure that all of our animals are eating so that when the males go off of food, that they're still good. You can still breed them to carry out your breeding season. But that female, because now those follicles are so big and she's starting to change up her whole body composition towards the production of that viable follicle, or ultimately those eggs, she will stop feeding for 1 or 2 reasons. First, because of vitellogenesis, and 2, because there's just no room. There's no room for her to actually eat. So a lot of the times what you'll notice, if you get to this stage, you might have a female that will eat, and right at the edge of when she's going off of food, and then she might actually regurgitate that food or not even consume the food. So I'm just letting you guys know, because you got to know the good and the bad. But let me show you an animal that is at 30 millimeters. So we got 10, 20, 30. So I'll look for a purple. Do I have any purples? I don't have any, oh, I got one right here. So this is an animal that's at that stage right now to where she is about to go through ovulation. She's going through one more shed, but this is a Huffman that is het for hypo, and we're breeding her to the TSK hypo as well. But you can see in there that she's already starting, she's about to go through shed, and then through that next phase now, she should be going off of food, right? So she's right at that level. And so I don't want you to get this confused, because that animal will still be shedding as they grow, because inevitably they don't have skin like ours that just, you know, has a turnover rate and it replaces itself. They have to shed off their skin after they grow. So as your snake, your female, starts to grow, she will also shed. So you'll see a higher frequency of shedding during this time. But this is an animal that's realistically, she's in between 25 to 30, and she should be getting ready to go off of food. But during this phase, you want to get those last pairings in to make sure that they actually go through the next step. So that's key, guys. And so I'm not disturbing them except to feed, clean, and water, remember, during this time, with the occasional time of adding in the male, spraying some secret sauce in there so that I can make sure that I get those last key locks in, because the next phase, I'm telling you, the next phase is your most important phase. We've already talked about 10, 20, 30 millimeters. So now let's talk about pre-ovulation. It is the step that I think is left out the most. I have left it out in the videos before, and that's why I looked at everything and I said, you know, I need to redo this. But there is actually a pre-ovulation phase. So as that animal gets up to 40 to 45 millimeters, she just doesn't go through ovulation. There's a pre-ovulation phase in which a lot of the times you might see that she's flat on her weight growth, right? So she gained 450 grams over baseline, and now she's still at 450 grams. Why? Because she stopped eating. So now you're not putting in the foodstuffs, and now she's actually taking some of the fat stores that she has and putting them in there with that follicle to get it ready to receive the sperm that she's been storing in her oviducts. And this is key, guys, because remember, so it's every 30 days. So this is about, we start off at 30, from 10 to 20, that's 30, and then 20 to 30, that's another 30. So this is after 90 days, 90 to about 120 days. So you're about 4 to maybe 4.5 months in, and now your animal's about to go through ovulation. So you'll notice her start to do more bowl wrapping, cool seeking. She might even start moving some of the substrate away because she's uncomfortable. So during this phase, this is when the follicles actually start to be moved down to the lower third of the body. In the beginning, it's up here, you know what I'm saying? It's all up here in the belly, guys, in the mid. In the second part, she puts it in her hips. Now, all humans who know a little bit about life knows that you're gonna either have your belly up here or down here. Well, in this case, she's basically squeezing those follicles down so that they can be fertilized by the sperm that the male has put in there. So this is key, guys, for you to limit disruptions, keep it quiet. You want to make sure that if you can still add, you know, humidity to the substrate, do it. But if not, just add a larger water dish or put more water in the existing dish that you have. During this phase, she will refuse the male. So that's when you know that something's going on. When you put that male in there and then you notice that they're not even next to each other, like in the last example we had, they're separate, like completely separate. She doesn't want to have anything to do with him. I don't know what goes on during that time. Maybe she strikes at him. Maybe she shakes and he just takes the hint like, okay, you're way bigger than me. I don't want you to squish me. Who knows? But at the end of the day, this is the pre-launch. So you can either go through ovulation at this phase or not. This is also the time when the female, if she doesn't go through ovulation, this is when she'll reabsorb, and this is the part that will throw you off. So the main thing is you want to look for that mid-body swelling. So I got an animal that's going through ovulation right now. Actually, I got a couple of them. So this is an animal that is about to go through ovulation right now. She just had a shed, and she's right there. She's been off of food for a while, and now she's already been through ovulation, and her body's starting to come back down. What you'll notice is after ovulation, the swelling goes away. And I have another animal that's about to go through ovulation, and she just had a shed. And so you can see how big her body is right now. And so this is an animal who's just went through ovulation. To prevent from disturbing her, I haven't even removed the shed out of there. All right. So that's a key thing when you're talking about ovulation. Okay, so I was looking at the video, and just right here, I wanted to interject and put in a new video to just really explain the differences between human ovulation and ball python ovulation and the whole process so that it can be just crystal clear. When humans produce eggs and, they come down the fallopian tube and they embed themselves into the uterus, they're already ready to go. So then the male sperm comes up through the vagina, through the cervix, into the uterus and fertilizes that egg on the uterine wall. So at that point, then we get, development of the egg and then, the pregnancy and everything else. And then you end up with a live viviparous birth, right? Now, there's no shell develop around the human embryo as it develops. It's just encased and protected in the female body. Now, if we look at, and I know that you're seeing this on the screen, but if we look at the female ball python, it's a little bit different, but it's much the same. It gets to the same result. So what happens is at 10 millimeters, you start pairing up that male, and then every month the follicle grows by 10 millimeters. So, in month 2, it's 20, then 3, it's 30, then ultimately then 4 to 4.5 months, it's 40 to 45. Now, at that point, the same thing that happens in a human where the egg leaves the fallopian tubes and goes down into the uterus. Now it just goes from the proverbial fallopian tube into the uterus of the ball python into the lower third of the body, because that's the birthing canal for the ball python for hatchlings. And at that point, then all of the collected sperm that's been gathered from the male's, locks month after month after month, or at least 3 months, and sometimes maybe even 5 or 6 months, depending on that female and just how quickly she develops that follicle and how quickly she can move that follicle into the ovulation point. Then those eggs are fertilized. Now, there's a lot more eggs to be fertilized in a ball python than a typical human, and with the exception of when there's twins, or if there's some in vitro fertilization, you might get 8 babies or something like Octomom. But in most ball pythons, we're looking at 6 to 8 eggs that are being fertilized. So that's the whole reason nature has determined that there needs to be a collection of sperm somewhere that the female can then, after those eggs are transferred down into her uterus at the lower third of the body, that now this sperm is allowed to apply all over the eggs. And then it's the same as with the human. So only one sperm fertilizes 1 egg. So if you have 8 eggs, that's 8 different sperm fertilizing those eggs. So that leads into the point of, so you want to make sure that you know who the males are, just to prevent confusion and maybe some unnecessary money that you'd have to spend, like we've spent, on genetic testing. I'm going to realistically say it'll take at least 4 months to about 6 to 7 months for them to go through this process. When they take longer, it's really frustrating because you're still checking weights, you're still doing all these things. But if they're still locking and that female is still aggressively feeding, then she's still building. Now, sometimes there's no locks, so I need you to observe those locks before the ovulation or pre-ovulation phase to make sure that that animal is building. If you don't see any locks, and every time you open up the tub or the enclosure, they're separated, then that should give you some reasons as to maybe why this isn't working, or if that female never gains weight. So if she gains 150 grams and then you go to try to see if she's going to make it to 20 millimeters and she doesn't gain any more weight, then maybe something's not working. You need to really track that female and make sure that you see if she's developing those follicles, so that they're going to move those follicles down to the lower third of their body is the key thing about this phase, guys. I mean, I think that's key. And then she'll start tightly wrapping to warm them up and to just kind of get them to the end. Now your female has went through ovulation and she's had an ovulation shed, which generally occurs about 14 days to about, I'm gonna say 20 days afterwards, right? There's an average. They all shed at different rates. So during this phase, the female, now she'll start losing weight, and you'll know that this is an ovulation shed because it comes a lot sooner than any other shed that she's ever had. She's not eating any other meals, but because the eggs have actually, she had that swelling when she went through ovulation. Now that she's smaller, she needs to readjust her scales back to the size that they need to be, so she has that ovulation shed. All right, this is important, guys. Now, this is where the calcium that you've been feeding with the rodent starts to come into play to actually make the shell that actually, even though it's soft, it's still a shell that goes around those embryos that we'll call at this point, since they've been fertilized. And now they're in line, and now she's just kind of growing them up. And this is when the finishing touches of the actual product actually starts to happen with those eggs. That's why when they lay the eggs, the clutch of eggs, that you candle them, you can actually see the cell of the snake there. And even though it's really small, it still has the same structure as a big one, but it just develops more. So the calcium starts to make that shell a little bit harder. And then what you'll end up with in between the ovulation and pre-lay shed is you'll end up with something that looks more like a snake. So that's why you get the pre-lay shed. When everything is ready to go, the female is already 100% committed to laying this clutch of eggs, then you get this pre-lay shed, because now this is when the official countdown happens. So, well, the official countdown starts with ovulation. So remember, 14 to 28 days. And then from there, you got to get to the pre-lay shed. And this is the thing that confused me the most. It's going to be 30 to 45 days before they have that pre-lay shed. It could come sooner, it could come later. But I'm going to say 30 to 45 days, starting at ovulation shed. It's about 21 days. Then we add on another 30 to 35 days. Let's just round that off to 2 months for the pre-lay shed. The pre-lay shed gets here, and then now we got another 30 days. So it's about 3 months before or after the ovulation occurs that you see eggs. So don't get in a rush on, okay, she just had her ovulation shed and she just had her pre-lay shed. Now when are my eggs coming? It's going to take 30 to 45 days, guys. And when you get them, you'll know, because you'll look in there, you'll peek in there, and what you'll see is that female is just sitting on a mound of eggs. So I'm going to show you some animals that are about to lay for us, and just to show you what they look like. So I'm going to use Padme, who is a Wookiee that we bred to a Batman, and she didn't move all of her stuff out the way, but you see how she's been sitting in that same spot. She's had her pre-lay shed, but she's been sitting in that same spot for the last 3 weeks. And now I'm gonna show you Corella, who is a double het DG hypo, and she's even came out. She's starting to move, so she's actually about to lay. And we bred her to a clown pie, so we're trying to make some quad hets here. But you can see that now she's starting to show a little interest. She's getting a little hungry. And what I notice is that she's starting to move around a little. And that's what you're gonna notice at the end of all of this. Your female will start getting a little restless, right? She's really trying to figure out how to work these eggs out. But remember, it's the egg that determines when they're actually laid, not the female. It's the same thing with humans. The baby actually determines when they're going to be born. They give off a hormone that tells the female body that, hey, I don't want to be in here anymore. So then she goes into labor and everything else. The same thing happens with the female ball python when she's getting ready to lay her eggs. And if we've all done our job right and we've assisted her, then she'll give you a clutch of eggs. Now, that is just the beginning. So if we think about it, now you didn't waste the time of the female, you didn't waste the time of the male, nor your feedings, because it's an investment by 3 parties, the male, the female, mostly the female, and then us. Like, the male and the keeper are on the same side, where the female is just kind of like, hey, you guys better take care of me or I'm gonna mess this up for you. Now you've got these clutch of eggs. The first thing that you need to do is you need to remove that female off of the eggs and put her in water so she can get hydrated, because remember, she hasn't really been doing anything for since she went off of food at 30 millimeters. So that's been almost 5 or 6 months, and she's probably been going without food, and an occasional sip of water, because she's so uncomfortable that she didn't want to do anything else. Now she's laid all these eggs. She has this huge vacuum in her, this huge confusion. Now you've just removed her from the eggs. So it's important for you to wash her off. And now you want to take those eggs while she's soaking, candle the eggs so that you can make sure that you see viable embryos in there. And you'll see that when you candle them, that the embryo will be right side up, or is the way that the female laid. But just to be sure, candle them and make sure that you rotate those to where the embryo is top side up. You want to put those in an egg box that you've already set up beforehand, just like you should have set up your incubator beforehand when she first went through the pre-lay phase. That's when I say you should set up your incubator. Set that incubator temperature at 88 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit with anywhere between 75 to about 90% humidity. You should be good to go. Now, I've done videos on egg box setups. A lot of people have. We use a water method. Flawless uses the Orbeez. And you know, if you look at some of Justin's or some of the other people's videos, they use vermiculite. So either way, whatever you choose to do, have that process down packed before you get those eggs. Have that incubator set at a really good temperature that's stable before you actually put those eggs in there, and you should be good to go. Man, I mean, this is incredible at this point. You incubate those eggs for about 55 to 60 days. Don't rush it. We incubate our eggs, as you're watching the screen, at 88 degrees Fahrenheit, and at about 57 to 60 days, then I cut. I don't see any reason to rush that, because this is the final time that your hatchlings will not have you in their life. After that, you're in their life. So I think let nature run its course. As they come out of the egg, you can put those hatchlings in another hatchling tub that's still kept in the incubator, that's got wet paper towels at the bottom. And in a week after they've hatched, then they should get their first shed. When they get that first shed, man, I'm telling you, it's the money. And that's what you're doing all of this for. So when you make your hatchlings, your holdbacks and the ones that you'll sell, that you'll have those, right? And I think that is when you get the complete joy of the complete process, and the fact that you help this female ball python and that male ball python create life. Because we're not doing anything. All we're doing is being a mediator for it. But at the end of the day, that's when your challenge starts, and you have to work on feeding your ball python hatchling. And that part is a whole different subject that I won't even get to go to. But just to recap everything, you start at 10 millimeters, and your females should grow. They shouldn't grow too much, about 150 grams. Then as they go to 20, then they should gain up to about 250 grams. And then when they go to 30, that's when you see your biggest increase of about maybe 450 grams. And then they go through a pre-ovulation phase and an ovulation phase. All of the mid-body swelling goes down to the lower third. And that's when you see that she's fertilizing with the sperm that she's collected from the male from each one of the locks, which is good because then they get to get a lot. Then they have that ovulation shed, that post-ovulation shed about 21 days later, and then they go through a pre-lay shed about, let's say, 30 days later, and then you'll see eggs about anywhere from 30 to maybe out to 45 or 50 days. That's a lot, guys, but that is the complete process from start to finish. At any phase, at any point in the phase where you see your female isn't growing, then just look at what you've done, try to check some of the things that are going on, and you know, maybe you can get her back on track. But if she does reabsorb, it's not the end of the world. We've had females reabsorb, and then they lay the next season. So that's one of the things that I think is key. But stay calm, take notes, have fun, and I hope that this video helped you. I know it's pretty lengthy, but this is a complete guide. Let me know what you think. If you like this type of content, please hit that like button and maybe subscribe to the channel so you can get more relevant information about ball pythons or just reptile keeping in general. And if nothing else, guys, I use a lot of words in this video, but enjoy that time that you spend with your reptiles and cherish that time that you have with your family. Thank you.